What's up guys, I'm about to take you through how I use the conjugate method for powerlifting. The conjugate method is a training system that is used to develop multiple strength qualities at the same time by rotating exercises and loading methods rather than peaking any individual quality for a long block. You're training max strength, speed and hypertrophy concurrently. In academics, we typically see training blocks designed to focus on one of these qualities at a time. You might see a 6-week hypertrophy block followed by a 6-week strength training block and then peaking power and strength for the last 6-week block. This type of system is based upon the idea that you can only train each of these qualities individually. In actuality, they can all be trained concurrently. And to do this, the conjugate method implements maximal effort training, dynamic effort training, and repetition effort training. In other words, lift heavy, lift fast, and lift for a lot of reps. A max effort lift is typically in the 1 to 3 rep range, but I'd be okay with extending that up to 5 reps if we were trying to minimize loading. This is going to develop neural efficiency, which will allow you to produce more force in the movement you're training. It will teach you to strain through a heavy lift. It will build confidence under heavy loads and give you the opportunity to figure out what headspace you need to be in when it comes to lifting max weights. And it allows you to identify any positional or technical weaknesses under a heavy load. Typically, we aim for 2 or 3 max effort sessions a week, a squat, a bench, and a deadlift. It's pretty common to see people alternating their squat and deadlift max effort work too. Typically it's for recovery purposes and for people who really enjoy maxing out, but I am more biased towards having 3 per week. The issue with 3 per week usually comes from a lifter's misunderstanding of a training max effort versus a competition max. So while we want to approach each lift with maximal intent, we don't need to get psyched up like it's competition day every time. The cost of fatigue that comes from a maximal effort lift is determined by the level of psychological arousal that is brought upon by the lifter prior to the attempt. Finally, to avoid burning out or running into a pit of fatigue, it is often best to rotate out these variations weekly, every second week, or as frequently as you want to. I typically like 3 weeks, and because I like to rotate every 3 weeks, I like to ramp up intensity from week 1 to week 3. So I'm going to see a heavier bar weight and a heavier RPE or level of effort on week 3 than I will on week 1. To make sure then that week 1 isn't too little work, I'm going to increase the volume with it. In practice, this could look like having pause squats in week 1 at 3x3 at an RPE 7, 1x3 at an RPE 8 on week 2, and then finishing off the wave with a 1x1 at RPE 9. Then following up on the next week by rotating out that variation. For example, if we see that on the pause squats our hips shot up, we are going to rotate in a quad biased main movement, so we might put in a high bar squat the next time. Now with dynamic effort, the goal is to lift a sub-maximal weight with maximal intent, moving the bar as fast as possible without the expense of technique. Usually we're looking at 40 to 60% of your 1 rep max, but we are going to determine this by bar speed. So if it is moving so fast that you can't really feel like you're putting any force into it, we might need to increase the weight. But if it is slowing down and it doesn't look very snappy, we are going to have to pull the weight back. When we are focusing on accelerating the bar, we are going to want to work in the lower rep range. So anything between 1 and 5 reps once the bar speed doesn't drop off as the set goes on. To combat the lower weight and the lower reps, we are typically going to increase the amount of sets. It's very common for dynamic effort lifts to have between 4 and 12 sets. Regardless of physiological benefits, you are going to get between 4 and 12 attempts at practicing your main lift without the added cost of fatigue if you load it appropriately. You can use variations here too if you like. It's very common to see bands and chains being implemented to help the lifter understand that they have to move with explosive force on their dynamic effort work. A typical 3-week wave for dynamic effort work for me might look like 9x3 at 40% with chains on bench, followed by 7x3 at 45%, followed by 5x2 at 50%. Again, rotating out the movement or switching up the rep range. Honestly, I don't think that matters too much once your technique is sound, but it can make training a lot more fun if you're rotating things out frequently. Finally, repetition effort work is training in the higher rep ranges. It's your accessory work typically. Or it can be used to replace your max effort or dynamic effort work in the off season if size is really a focus. Anything in the 6 to 25 rep range would be considered repetition effort work for me. Above that, and we're kind of looking at not getting a major return on the work we're doing. A session under the conjugate method would place your dynamic effort work or your max effort work first, followed up by your repetition effort work. Then your accessories are ordered by the level of importance for you. If we use the example from earlier where the person doing pause squats had a quad weakness, we are going to prioritize quad-based accessories for them. So we would see a hack squat or a front squat used for the primary accessory, followed then by a quad bias Bulgarian split squat. But we don't want to avoid all the other muscle groups used in squats. So we're going to still touch upon glutes, hamstrings, upper back and lats and abs in our session. So we are ordering things in what is going to have the most carryover to our main movement. And I do like to see the rep ranges increase as the session goes on. So we're typically going to see 1 to 3 reps for our max effort work, then maybe 6 to 10 for our hack squats, 8 to 12 for our following movement, and then it's going to go anywhere between 8 to 25 for the remainder of your movements. Just be smart. Not always a good idea to do sets of 6 on leg curls, and then we might want to do sets of 25 with stiff leg deadlifts. But over time, you'll figure out what works well for you on the accessory side of things. Like the max effort and dynamic effort work, I am going to ramp intensity up over the 3 weeks. So I'm going to see heavier weight used on week 3 than I did on week 1. And then usually I'll rotate out the movements. If they are a lighter movement like a leg extension or a pull down, I might keep them in. But if it's a heavier movement like a front squat, I might want to rotate them out and switch up the variation. Feel free to rotate in as many movements as you like, but try not to get caught up in just rotating in movements for the sake of it. That's something that really messes people up when it comes to conjugate. Figure out what works for you, rotate it in as frequently as you can without it impacting your recovery or performance. Now, there are differences in what we would do in the off season compared to competition prep, and then things would change again based on the individual's needs. But the beauty of the conjugate method is it allows you to rotate in whatever you want depending on that lifter's needs and the time of year. And if you're looking to see how the conjugate method could work for you and my adaptation of the conjugate method specifically, feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram and we can discuss online coaching and have you joining the team.